There are hundreds of basic and alternate recipes in Satisfactory 1.0. Some of them are absolutely amazing, whilst others not so much. So I've made it my mission in Satisfactory to compare every single recipe in the game to inform you guys on what the best and worst recipes are. So welcome to the best recipes in Satisfactory 1.0 series. Today's video is all about the Adaptive Control Unit, Phase 3 space elevator part that's produced right here in the manufacturer. This is actually a really important item because, as we've previously talked about, it is used in Phase 3 of the space elevator. However, you then need to make this to make something called the Assembly Director System for Phase 4 of the space elevator. That in itself is then used to make something else called the Biochemical Sculptor, which is used in Phase 5. But fear not, I will have a separate video dedicated to that, as well as the Assembly Director System. But of course, today we're here for this. To make this item, you need automated wiring, circuit board, heavy modular frames, and computers, which in my opinion actually is a pretty decent recipe. This is the recipe which has been neatly laid out, and today we are going to be making 10 adaptive control units. This is what we need, starting with 20 computers, then 50 circuit boards, 10 heavy modular frames, and lastly, 50 automated wiring. This is where we are going to begin. To make our 50 automated wiring, we are going to need 50 stators per minute as well as 1000 cable, because believe it or not, a recipe that has the word wiring in it requires quite a lot of wire and cable. But regardless, that 1000 cable then needs 2000 wire to make. And the 2000 wire using the iron wire alternate recipe requires 1112 iron ingots. And again, I've used another alternate recipe down here as well called the pure iron ingot, which essentially means I save a bunch of iron but I have to use water. And this then requires 600 iron ore and 344 water to make our 1000 cable, which honestly I don't feel is too bad. I know this is quite a lot of resources, but it has to be done. And the reason as to why I'm using iron wire can also be explained using our stator recipe, where again we need 50 stators, which is going to require 150 steel pipe and 400 wire. Now, as you can see, again we are using those 400 iron wires, which makes everything nice and simple, and we're using something called iron pipe. You can also use something called molded pipe, which is just like the basic recipe using steel ingots, but you end up using a little bit of concrete there as well, which saves you on iron. It also saves you on coal, so it's pretty good for that reason. But this requires 600 iron ingots. So in total, we're going to need 824 iron ingots for our 50 stators. But again, using those pure iron ingots, it means that we only have to consume 444 iron ore and 254 water. I absolutely love this recipe, mostly because logistically it's really simple to make. Just get a bit of iron in, get a bit of water, and well, you're pretty much sorted, and there you go, you got yourself 50 automated wiring. Regular viewers of the channel know exactly where we're going with this one. That is right, it's heavy modular frames. I love this alternate recipe. It's called the heavy encased frame, and the reason as to why I love it is because you're consuming less modular frames in our basic recipe, less encased industrial beams in our basic recipe, less steel pipes in our basic recipe, and you don't have to make hundreds, if not thousands, of screws per minute. You just have to use a little bit of concrete. Like, this recipe is generally fantastic, and I 1000% recommend that you use this. Time for a closer look. To make our 74 concrete, I'm using wet concrete in the refinery, which again combines limestone with water, which means that you can get a bunch more concrete for the amount of limestone that you're using. Next up, we've got our 120 steel pipes, which again, we're using our iron pipe recipe, which keeps all of our logistics nice and similar. Same with our stator recipe, and quite a lot of other recipes I use with those steel pipes, as we're about to see now with our 33.4 encased industrial beams, which uses our wet concrete that I just showed you, and our iron pipe, which again I've just shown you. Then lastly, we've got our modular frame, which uses the exact same things we were using in our previous recipe. We've got iron plates, which it is what it is, you have to use a bit of iron plates every now and then, iron wire and iron pipe. So the only two raw resources we are consuming so far out of everything you've just seen is limestone and iron. This is a really good start to the recipe, and in all honesty, it doesn't really get too much worse with the circuit boards. This is my go-to circuit board recipe because it doesn't use any crude oil, but there are better ones out there if you just want to consume crude oil. And it's important that I do say I have made an entire video breaking down all 4 circuit board recipes that go a lot further in depth than what I'm about to do, but essentially this requires copper and crude oil, this requires just crude oil, This requires copper and raw quartz. Essentially, it doesn't require any crude oil. And this requires caterium, potentially copper, depending on what recipe you want to try and use, and crude oil. So this recipe, just crude oil. This recipe, zero crude oil. This is the one I've gone for. But again, if you have got an oil factory, you might want to make this. Because what you could do is make a bunch of rubber using, if I just very quickly show you here, using this recipe, which I don't massively recommend, but if you want to use it, that's completely fine. You can then turn your heavy oil residue, which you get as a byproduct from making rubber, into petroleum coke. So it's actually a pretty good recipe in all honesty. But yep, today I've opted with this, and to make our 50 circuit boards, we are only going to need 66 raw quartz and 44 copper ore. So it really isn't that bad. I know that a lot of players, including myself in all honesty, don't like to use a ton of raw quartz, and that's understandable. But when it's only 66 per minute, I think it's pretty decent. And again, this copper sheet recipe I do recommend. It's nice and simple to do. You do have to use steamed copper sheets and pure copper ingots, but you end up saving a good amount of copper there, and yeah, obviously a little bit of water involved if you so wish. Lastly, we need 20 computers, and again, I've made an entire dedicated video talking about this, but I've actually changed up my recipe a little bit since then. Regardless, we are going to need quartz crystals, where I'm using pure quartz crystals, again, using water, saving more quartz, very nice. We are also going to need 140 cable, which, again, using our iron wire recipe is nice and simple, as well as our reinforced iron plates, which again, just requires iron. I've already showed you guys the circuit board recipe, so there's no point repeating myself, but again, very nice. So that's our recipe breakdown of the 10 adaptive control units, but now let's break down the resources required, the machines required, and the overall power needed to produce these items. Starting with those resources required, we need 1970 water per minute. Of course, like I always say, this in theory can be 0 per minute, but it then means that everything here then goes up, which I don't particularly want it to. We then need 2220 iron, 322 limestone, 308 raw quartz, and 72 copper. Everything here is completely fine. Obviously, 2220 iron ore is quite a lot, but we are making 10 adaptive control units. And in theory, this is only 2 Mark III miners at 250% efficiency. So it's not really that bad, but it's not a little amount either. Regardless, moving on to our machines required, where we are going to need 14 manufacturers consuming 750 megawatts, 70 assemblers consuming 976 megawatts, 96 refineries consuming 2,512 megawatts, and lastly, and no, this is not a mistake on my part, this is legit, 218 constructors consuming 830 megawatts. And the reason for this is rather simple. Remember this recipe? Yeah, I mean, to make 2,000 wire and 1,000 cable with the iron wire recipe, it does require quite a lot of constructors. Now, having a very quick gander at the total power required, it's only 5,068 megawatts, which might sound like a lot, but compared to other recipes we've done, then it's not too bad. But regardless, there we go. That is the adaptive control units recipe, the power requirements, the resources required, and everything nice and neatly laid out. Now remember, just because I say these are the best recipes, it doesn't mean that you have to follow them exactly. If you want to change a recipe, feel free. I mean, that's the best way to play the game. Explore, have a little bit of fun. If you feel like a recipe is pretty bad, feel free to use the recipes I use. I think they're pretty decent personally, but again, it's entirely up to you. This video is a guide. It's not telling you what to do, it's just telling you how I like to do it personally. Regardless, do let me know in the comments down below. Would you like to see more of these space elevator part videos? Because so far, I'm really enjoying making them. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you did enjoy it, and I'll see you on the next video. Goodbye.